Hi everybody, welcome to our Sinclair. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today we're going to be talking about Chaos, the Battle of Wizards.
Yeah, that's a great name.
It is a great name.
I would have picked this game strictly on the name. As you know, that's how I like to do it.
But before we get into Chaos, we got some great response to our community question last week, Aaron.
All right.
Last week's community question was, what's your favorite Speccy martial arts game?
Okay.
And there are a ton. We got feedback from all across the internet, from Reddit to the World of Spectrum forums, over on Atari Age, Facebook.
Wow.
And there were most of the responses kind of were the same game. So I wanted to share some of the most popular titles. Way of the Exploding Fist.
Yeah, I hear that one a lot.
Target Renegade.
I hear that one a lot.
Yeah. And I guess the remake, there's a remake of Kung Fu Master called Mr. Kung Fu that we need to try because we both love Kung Fu Master.
I do. And I've heard, I've never played Target Renegade, but I've heard a lot of good things about it. And Way of the Exploding Fist, I think I've played that. That's on the C64 too. And
probably so. But the best answer came from Redditor. They took your jobs. They took your jobs.
What's that mean?
I don't know. But he said, Vatman. Okay, get ready for Vatman.
Vatman.
Yeah.
All right.
So do you know, first of all, do you know what the VAT is?
I have no idea.
Okay, so the VAT is the value added tax in Britain.
Okay.
Okay, so you must know that to understand what follows.
Okay.
So the British Chancellor of the Exchequer, the government minister in charge of the money.
That's a heck of a title right there.
Yes. He dons a superhero suit and beats up VAT tax-dodging ne'er-do-wells in a sideways scrolling punch fest that made no sense. He says it's technically not a martial arts game, but you could stick the last ninja on there as well.
Is he a good guy?
You know, it's a gray area.
Yeah, because it doesn't seem like Europe. No one wants to be the tax man.
Right.
They want to smack around the tax man.
Right. Maybe it's like the Nightmare on Elm Street game where you played as Freddy.
Yeah, that's how bizarre.
Yeah.
So what is the equivalent in America to the VAT?
The IRS. Well,
like sales tax.
Yeah, sales tax.
I got it.
Yeah.
We hate that too.
We do. But it's weird because they don't. Well, it's just like in America, they don't tax. Everything, not everything gets the VAT. For example, biscuits, no VAT tax.
Like cookies.
Right.
Okay.
But cakes, yes.
What?
No, it's the other way around. Cakes, yes. Cookies, no.
Where's the formula that determines that?
I'll tell you.
All right.
Okay. This is one of the many things that I learned when I was spending tens of thousands of dollars getting my master's degree in England. So there are these things called Jaffa cakes. Have you heard of these before?
I think I have heard of them, yeah.
Okay. It's like an orange-flavored, chocolate-covered, soft biscuit.
Oh, that sounds so good.
Okay, they are very good.
I like that.
So the VAT man said, we need to tax those because they're biscuits.
Okay.
And he said, no, they're cakes. I call them cakes right there on the thing. And he's like, well, they look like a biscuit to me. And get this, okay? When biscuits get old, they get soft. When cakes get old, they get hard.
Okay.
Therefore, a Jaffa cake is a cake because when it gets old, it gets hard.
So they were good.
They were good.
That is
justice prevailed.
That is complicated. Who decided that biscuits would get taxed and not cakes?
The VAT man.
What about booze? They tax that?
Oh yeah.
But what about soda pop?
I think the only thing that's not taxed are biscuits.
Really? That's weird. Are you kidding me?
I might be kidding.
Yeah, you lied about this entire segment.
I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know the ins and outs of the VAT system, but I do know that story. And I know it to be true.
That is a weird one.
It is. So thank you, everybody, for weighing in on this past week's community question. This week's community question, please write in whatever way you'd like to. You can send us an email at feedback@rsinclair.com, or you can post on YouTube or on Reddit or wherever you see this show posted. This week's community question is, did anyone use their Spectrums to aid in role-playing? That means not just playing role-playing games on your Spectrum, but did you ever use them for character sheets, for added ambiance, maybe for a soundtrack or something like that? I want to hear from you.
Now, if I may, of course I didn't have a Spectrum, but I did use the PC quite a bit to help me in my dungeon mastering roles back in the day. And then eventually you'd throw some creepy music or something, or sound effects on there, use it for maps. Nowadays everyone uses them for that stuff, but I mean way back, TSR even, I think they had a special bit of software that came out that you could that you could use. Well, I mean, I know they did one for characters and character generation, but I think they actually had one specifically made for dungeon mastering. I
know lots of people programmed, character sheet generators and things like that.
Yeah, and I used to, when we played Champions, the character generator was a must because the math was so difficult that you had to have that, that nice character generator. So yeah, that's a good question. It'd be interesting because that's pretty far back in the spectrum. I don't know. I bet they did. Anytime you've got a computer and you've got D&D players, they're going to mix them together.
Yeah. All right, well, enough of that. It's time to jump into this week's game, Aaron. Chaos, the Battle of Wizards.
Yeah, man.
Tell us a little about it.
All right, man. So, first of all, as I often say, I've not played this before, and I can safely say, without a doubt, I had never heard of this game. I had never seen the game. And when me and Boat initially played the game, when we loaded it up this week, I looked at it and I was like, oh man. I talked to him earlier. I was like, this looks like it's going to go down hard. But we'll see what we thought. So, this game is Chaos, or the full name, Chaos, the Battle of Wizards. That's a great name, by the way. This came out 1985. Now, I found this interesting. This was published by Games Workshop. And sure enough, it was the Games Workshop, which I didn't know for sure. The same guys that do like Warhammer and whatnot, they published video games for a time, and this was one of the ones that they put out. They actually put out a bunch. I'll just mention a couple here, and again, these games I don't know what they are. D-Day, Castle of Lost Souls, Runestone, and Battle Cars. And Battle Cars, I did find out was basically a computerized port of their game. I've heard of Battle Cars. I've not played the actual game. So
Games Workshop, most famous for the Warhammer universe.
That's right. They've been around forever. I will say one thing: do not screw with Games Workshop because they rule hobby stores with an iron fist. They're well known to be difficult to work with. The fellow that was responsible for this game was a guy named Julian Gollop. I think I'm pronouncing that right.
Julian Gollop.
So now. Again, I couldn't pick Julian Gollop out of a lineup, but it turns out he's actually a very, very decorated programmer, and he was responsible for the XCOM series, which was, enough said. I looked around to see what I could find out about this fellow, and sure enough, this guy that I found a couple interviews with him, and when he was 14, he was into Dungeons & Dragons and Avalon Hill games and board games, as you can imagine, so this all makes sense. And he bought himself a ZX81 from a buddy at school for 25 pounds and started programming on it. And that's how he got his start.
The ZX81 being the predecessor to the Spectrum.
Yeah. So, now get this. I thought this was great. He played a game that Games Workshop made called Warlock. All right, which again, I'll be honest with you, I'm not familiar with it. Now you got to remember, this is the early '80s, and this was when old me was pretty young. So these games were well beyond me in '83 or '84, '85. But I had heard of this stuff, but I never played it. So anyways, he was in this game called Warlock, and so the kids at school wouldn't let him play it. And this is his words. He said, "Screw that! I'll make my own, and I'll make it better."
Wow. I said that all the time, and I never did anything. So
he made a board game in '82, and then they did a preliminary programming by a fellow named Andy Green on the BBC B, and then he decided to do the ZX Spectrum version, and lo and behold, this was born. Now I like this too. He says, in a way, Chaos is one of my favorites of all the games I've ever made, and which he's proud of this game. He also mentions that he's often asked if it would be okay if people made their own version of it, and he always tells them to go ahead. Well, they did, and I've got a list. I'm not going to go down, but it's like there's probably 30 versions of this game made and spread all over the world. So it's been made and remade over and over. But the fella is very proud of his game. So what is the game? Again, this game came out on the ZX Spectrum, the 48K. Now, this is actually, it's not that complicated to explain the premise of this game. This game supports 1 to 8 players, which that in itself is quite astounding. and you could have any number of computer and human players. You each pick a name. You pick a wizard icon from a selection. You pick a color for your guy. This is your guy in the game. Once the game starts, you basically battle these other wizards, up to 8, and you pick from a selection of spells, and you use these spells to try to defeat your opponents. It's pretty simple. It sounds simple anyway, until you actually look into it and understand the depth of it. And the depth of it is in the selection of spells. Now, when we first started this game, because we had no knowledge of how it worked, and so I didn't understand exactly what was going on. But between playing it a bunch of times and reading stuff, I've kind of gotten a better idea what was happening. You randomly start with a selection of spells, and these are the spells you've got in the game to take out your opponents. The spells can be anything from summoning a creature or an animal. They can be attack spells. They can be defense spells. They can be spells to raise the dead. They can be spells to basically charm other people's monsters. There's a bunch of spells, and one spell everyone has in common is a spell called Disbelieve. When you cast a creature, you have the ability to say, is this going to be an illusion or not? Why would you do that? Because you have varying difficulties in casting these spells. Some spells might be an 80% chance of success, whereas some might be a 10% chance. And if the percentage is low, you can cast it as an illusion and get a 100% success rate. The caveat is if someone uses the disbelief spell on whatever you've cast, it instantly goes away. So there's a risk that you're going to lose one of your really good creatures very quickly because you faked it, basically. When you initially played this, before we get real deep into it, what were your thoughts and how have they progressed as you've played during the week?
Well, at the beginning, much like you, I didn't understand. We watched a couple videos of people playing this game, supposed tutorials, which were basically just people screaming and cursing while they played the game very quickly.
We watched, what, 3 different ones?
Yeah, they were all the same. It was all, F this guy, and people just moving at mock speed. Because once you get the keyboard commands down, you can really play this game really quickly.
Yeah.
It really wasn't until when I started to play it here at Amigo Studios, because we did play around each other, over at Amigo Studios East, and it was over quite quickly. You destroyed me.
Vampire, man.
Yeah. It wasn't until I started playing here when I really started to figure out the genius of this game. And the genius of this game is the procedural generation of the characters and the spells. So whenever you select your wizard, you are only, you have no idea what your statistics are going to be until the game starts. So the way that you play the game is based on how strong your character is, basically. If you roll a weak character, then you might want a turtle. If you roll a stronger character, you're going to be more of a tank. And then layered on top of that is this random selection of spells that you have. And the spell choice, you're going to get a mixture of creature spells, environment spells, like different kinds of forests and castles and things, and then you're going to also have things that affect the terrain, like the gooey blob. And since everybody's spells are totally random every game, it's a totally different game every time. It's not like so many games now where you have a certain class, everybody always plays this class, and they get really good at it, and the game becomes much less fun, in my opinion, because it's not an exercise in like how well can you think on your feet. That's pretty much the foundation of why I think this game is great.
The game, one thing, and I've only learned this in the past couple of days, because again, I've been learning this whole week. As you cast spells, you've got some spells that are chaos, some that are like lawful, and some that are neutral. And if you cast more spells of a certain alignment, it will make other spells of that alignment easier to cast, which that goes into a lot of the strategy of it. You can, like Boat said, you can actually choose to. Normally, I hide my wizard like a weenie boy and get him out of there. But if you happen to get the right spells to where you can make him tougher and maybe get him a nice weapon and get some amount, you can go out and, because the one thing about the wizards, they can cast those attack spells that are real nasty, but they have to be close enough to hit them.
Right.
So that means you're going to wade out in the combat with.
So I guess we should talk about how the turns work in this game.
Yeah, there's actually, it's really quite simple. I can't believe I'm saying this because this is such a departure from what I would normally play. But I mean, it's actually, when you boil it down, it's a simple procedure. At first, everyone in the game goes around picking a spell. Simple, all right? So, and then once that's done, then everyone goes around the table in that same order, casting their spell. If you attempt to summon someone, it'll either pass or fail. If you attempt to do something or affect the game, your spell will pass or fail. And once that's completed, then you've got a movement phase. Movement phase, you may move your gorilla a couple steps towards the other guy's bat. And then if you get close enough to attack, it will give you the choice of attack. You hit the button as to which way you want to attack, and he attacks, and if it does damage or kills the guy, it tells you. It's real simple. If you've got a ranged character, they can attack at range. They can go over 6 or so blocks and shoot. And if you have a guy that can do, some characters, you roll up, you attack them with the range and the hand-to-hand if they're right beside the other guy. And then once everyone has moved, that's the end of the round, and you start over. It's pretty simple stuff. What makes the game fun for me, I used to play a game, I've mentioned this before, called Archon and Archon 2 Ultra Adept. Archon 2 Adept reminds me of this. Archon 2 Adept's like the starter version of this, because this is a much more abstract game than Archon 2. It's the same sort of thing where a wizard summons a creature and then places them on a board. But in that game, there's actual, twitchy hand-to-hand combat. This is the turn-based version. And it's actually, they dovetail quite nicely. If you want a fast-paced version of this, I suggest you try Archon 2 Adept. It's a similar sort of game. But where this one shines is, it's funny, you wouldn't think this would be a good thing, but it is. And the fact that it's so random when you start the game, it changes. It's almost like what it reminds me of, Bo, and you would be more into this. I mean, it's almost like a collectible card game. You draw your deck, and this was way ahead of its time in a lot of ways. And you never know what you're going to get. Even more so than a card game. And so you've got to play the hands you're dealt. Sometimes you've got a weak hand. You've got to be clever. You may have to wait out your opponents, let them go after each other. Maybe you need to go hide. Maybe you need to put some obstacles up to keep him off of you. But for the most part, I found that it seems to me to be a fairly fair game when it comes up. I don't ever feel like I've gotten totally screwed. There's usually something, there's one or two good things in there. Something else we should mention is that when you use your spells, they're gone. You may have. I played my son the other day or yesterday, and I had like three ghosts, I think it was. Well, you can cast ghosts 3 times. If you have one ghost, you got ghost 1 time, and it's gone. Now, I believe Magic Woods will allow you to regain some spells.
Yeah, so if you hang out in the Magic Woods, then you can after a certain amount of turns, whatever tree you're hiding in will disappear, and you'll have gained a new spell.
Right. So that's, and there may be other ways. If I haven't found them. And by no means is a week long enough to master this.
No.
But I feel like I've got a good grip on it. I wanted to play this with somebody, so I brought my kid in to play it last night. My kid is into these, he likes to play these Plants vs. Zombies, and he's some light strategy stuff. And he ate this up with a spoon, and he made me play it until he went to bed. We played 3 games last night, and then we played today while we were having lunch. We played on my phone, and he's super. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's a great game for a kid to jump in on. It's the funny thing about it. I think that's why I like it so much, is that it's deep, it's complex, but it's not so complex where I feel overwhelmed. Does that make any sense? And so I feel like I've instantly got a grasp on generally what's going on. The graphics on this thing, I think, are surprisingly good. I was talking to Gary last night on the stream.
This is Gary James.
Gary James, and it almost has an Odyssey feel to it. The colors and the shapes Did you get that vibe?
Oh yeah. And we should mention that the reason why you were talking to Gary about that is because Gary's done several Odyssey 2 to Amiga ports.
That's right. And he's our resident Amiga guy or Odyssey guy.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that remind me about the O2. The blue border that surrounds the screen.
Yeah. Even the way the font is.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. There's lots of things. The thing that's so amazing to me is that you have these incredibly simple sprites, but he's been able to endow them with such a sense of personality.
Yeah.
You know, the goblin is waving his club in almost kind of a jocular manner.
I like the gorilla.
Yeah.
He's beating
gorilla.
his chest.
The vampire has a flowing cape.
Yeah.
There's so many cool things, and the amount of spells, you know, there are so many spells in this game, and some spells are more rare than others, you know, and so you might play this game 50 times and only come across certain spells 1 or 2 times.
Yeah, I'm sure I haven't seen them all, because every time I played it, I saw one I didn't understand or recognize.
Yeah. So it's a really neat thing that has a tremendous amount of replay value. I will say that even though this game supports, you know, up to 8 players, I can only imagine back in the day what you'd have to do to get 8 players around the table, you know, because you can't really pass the Spectrum keyboard around.
I was just thinking, this would be awesome if the Spectrum were totally wireless.
Yeah.
And you just pass that sucker around the table. I know when we played it today at the restaurant on the phone, that's a hassle in itself, just passing the phone back and forth. Because this is the kind of game you really need if you're going to play with a bunch of people. You need one social screen that you can all look at. Mm-hmm. This game is, and I asked, and no one told me otherwise, so I guess it doesn't exist, but if ever a game were ported to some sort of online play, this is the game. It'd be perfect for it.
There is a new version of Chaos that is with updated graphics. It looks like a modern game, and I'm sure it's different in some ways that is out on Steam and GOG and things, but it would be marvelous if somebody could code some sort of an HTML-based, you know, Sinclair version of Chaos for online play. I would love to play this online with our Amigos community.
Yeah, and apparently this was also had an Amiga port, which I would have never guessed.
Yeah,
may have to give that one a look sometime.
Yeah.
This game got pretty good scores. Now, you know, our knowledge of the Spectrum mags is way lower than our knowledge of the Amiga mags. So every time I read these, you can use your own judgment on what that means. But World of Spectrum gave this 8.33. That's the website. That's a pretty good score. I'm assuming they're kind of like Lemon. Mm-hmm. Crash gave this 8 out of 10. Sinclair User gave it 4 out of 5. And White Dwarf even looked at this one and gave it 7 out of 10. Now get this, boat. In the final issue of Your Sinclair in '93, this was listed in 5th place of the Your Sinclair readers' top 100 games of all time.
Wow,
that's pretty good. In 2006, Games TM listed Chaos at position 44, the top 100, and it was that means it was the second highest ranked Spectrum game behind Manic Miner. So you're up in the upper echelon of games. I guess my closing thoughts on it is, I think this game, I'm surprised I never heard of this because it's so good. It's so good. I was telling Boat before the show, because I've said this before, but never, ever have my first impressions been so wrong. I mean, everything about this, I was like, man, here's a strategy game. Look at it. And it was awesome. I love it. I've played about 1 million games this week. And one thing I should mention is the incredible feat of getting 8 players on this. When you play a full 8-player game, I've played it with me, Luke, and the computer. It is chaos. It's absolute madness. This crazy stuff going on, and it's a lot of fun. This would be a pretty good party game, I think. If you could actually have a strategy game at a party.
Oh yeah,
a turn-based strategy game. I think this is the one.
Yeah, and especially playing it on with an emulator with a wireless keyboard and being able to pass the keyboard around. It would be great. It would be a hoot. You know, the thing that I really enjoyed about this was that I really did feel like, more than most role-playing games, I really felt like I was doing more of a tabletop role-playing thing in this, and that I was choosing my spells and I was rolling, I was doing my movement points and things like that. And a lot of that is also reflected in games like XCOM 2, where everything is point-based. I wanted to ask you, what game, aside from just like a straight up, like tabletop simulator or something like that, what video game that you've played, is the most like a real tabletop role-playing experience to you?
Oh boy. That's a good question. You know, it depends if we're talking classic games or more modern stuff. I mean, if you've played any of the newer Elder Scroll stuff, help me out here. What was one of the newer ones?
Skyrim?
Skyrim, or those. I mean, that is an impressive. That's impressive. You know, the amount of NPC stuff you can do. But when I played back in the day, I hate to say it, but I always liked the Eye of the Beholder. I thought that gave you a good impression. You know, that was like a D&D game. I played some of the gold box stuff, and they were pretty good too. Trying to think if I had a particular favorite. Silver Blades, I think, was pretty good. But I mean, the thing is, I've never gotten the feeling of a role-playing game that closely when I was playing a video game, probably because I played so much D&D back in the day that really it's hard to replicate that in a game. I mean, people think it's replicated, and I often think that people that think it's replicated probably haven't done a whole lot of role playing.
Yeah.
It's not. It's very dissimilar in
right.
most ways.
And you know, I would say that although I like, you know, a lot of those games that you mentioned, to me the fun in role playing is the social aspect of it. You know, it's having, you know, the DM there that's telling you the story as it goes along. It's having your buddies sitting around the table, and that's what makes this game so much more of a, you know, of a role playing like experience for me. Because if you're sitting around the table playing with your friends, you know, you're all casting spells together and talking about what you're doing.
Yeah.
To me, that's a lot more authentic to the tabletop role playing experience than a game like Skyrim. You know, if you had a DM that was sort of telling a story as you went along, that would be, you know, it would be fantastic. You could use this as almost like a player aid. You know?
Yeah. You know, did you have anything? Were there anything in this that you would like to have seen changed or be different? I've got a few suggestions that I could.
Why don't you talk about yours first?
When you were moving, first of all, I would like it to be made impossible for you to shoot your own guy. I saw you do that on the live stream, and I laughed. Oh, I laughed so hard last night when you did that. And then I promptly did it my first game against Luke. I nuked my own wizard with a dragon. I'd like to have seen him make it so you can't do that, just for dumb guy purposes. I'd also wouldn't mind seeing, at least on the movement phase, I wouldn't mind actually seeing a grid. I think it would help you because you sort of have to measure stuff out. It would have been easier if you could actually. I mean, I know it seems stupid, but I mean, if the screen is mostly black, it's hard to judge how. And so you'd have to go out and peck with the keyboard and peck it out. You know, so that I would like to see that. And of course, if you're really going to modernize it, I would even like to see it if you've got a ranged weapon or a movement where it just has an area highlighted that you can go, or maybe even a line that comes out with an arrow that you could just kind of move around.
Yeah, I agree with all that stuff except for the inability to shoot your own guy. I think you just have to play smart. You know, I fully accept my own dumbness there.
Listen, the thing is, do the interface. It's I didn't even mean to do it. I was trying to target that guy to move him.
And that goes to my next point. Is that instead of making it impossible, what they should put in the bottom of the screen, you've got a text area, and in the lower left corner, whatever you're targeting currently shows up. In the right corner, they need to put movement phase or targeting phase. If they put one of those two words there,
that's a good idea.
That would solve that problem.
That's also a good idea. Yeah, I mean the interface. I mean it's pretty good considering what what year it is and what you're using. But I mean. There were subtle changes that probably could have made it a little bit better, but I mean again it's nothing that's remotely game breaking. My son did not feel that the game that the spells were even. Of course he always thought I got better at spells than him, and I have no way of knowing if people think that they're even, if there's even a formula that tells you that was used when they split the spells up. I don't know. I have heard that when you set the difficulty higher, what difficulty did you usually play on?
I played on the easiest difficulty.
I went up to 4.
Does the game get markedly harder?
It gets tougher because, and I read this to confirm it, the CPU doesn't get smarter; it just gets tougher. So you'll have more hit points or more. It gives them more. It's a stat boost more than a CPU boost.
Right.
Now that's what I read anyway. But I mean, it was tougher. That's for darn sure. And of course, not knowing what you're doing early on, it can be frustrating. But it's not so bad where you don't think you have a chance. Even when you're screwed, I mean, if you're totally out of spells, then you're probably boned. But I mean, if you get a couple spells, you still have a shot.
Right, and you're never without your trusty melee weapon. You know. you've always got that.
Yeah, but if you're doing that, you're in deep trouble.
Well, it just depends. I mean, if you've got the magic sword or if you've got the magic bow like I had last night, you don't need spells. You can take people out yourself. So, it does make you play smart with the limited Gloomhaven, which is the massive board game that I bought, that Chad and I have played like 3 times. Even though it cost me like hundreds and hundreds of dollars. It works on the same principle where you have a very limited number of spells, and once you use them, you're gone. So we did get some reviews on our Amigos Retro Gaming Discord server. Just a reminder that if you are a Patreon supporter of the show, we'd love to have you over on our Discord server. Chris Foles writes, "The genesis of a genre, a turn-based wizard battle game that is fun single-player but multiplayer comes alive. What it lacks in graphics and sound, it makes up for in sheer fun and ease of access." 9 out of 10. He loved it. And Pixels at Dawn says, "The best multiplayer game on the Spectrum hands down, with incredible depth and chess-like strategy. The AI can get a bit buggy around the undead and the sound isn't up to much, but other than that, it's an amazing game that I still come back to regularly over 30 years later." 9 out of 10. Yeah, so very good reviews from our Discord community, and very good reviews from us.
Did you have a favorite creature or spell?
I mostly just like them because of the animations.
Yeah.
But I must say that, like I said, I really liked the goblin, the merry goblin. He just was waving, with the club. I thought he was a cool guy.
I love to lead with the bear. I think he's a pretty good character. He can take a lot of damage. I'm a big fan of the old bear, and the ghosts are good too. I looked this up on eBay, by the way, just before we move along. When this came out, I looked this up, just happened to have the information. Originally, when this came out, it was £8. It's incredibly cheap.
Yeah.
And then it budgeted down to £2. What a deal on a budget.
Yeah.
On eBay, I could not find any.
Really?
There was not a single one.
That is incredible, because this
surprised.
also came as a cover tape for a magazine.
Yeah.
I think Pixel said that was how he was first exposed to it. So
Yeah.
I can't believe there are none out there.
I could not
insane.
find a single one. So if you're looking for eBay, good luck.
Oh.
It'd be nice to keep saying. I like to see what just to have.
Yeah.
Kind of neat to have.
Yeah. We did get some feedback from our last show, Aaron.
All right.
Paul Fogarty on Facebook. Remember how you mentioned when we were talking about the footprint of the Spectrum?
Yeah.
And you said that there was a Tandy portable computer that had a similar footprint?
Yeah.
He said that that particular Tandy that you mentioned was used for cross development on the Spectrum.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, pretty neat, pretty neat. All right, guys. Well, before we wrap up this week's show, I'd just like to remind you that if you'd like to support us, you can go over to patreon.com/OurSinclair. If you support us, you get access to our Discord server, where there's tons of swag you can get. You can help us choose the games that we play every week. It's a great time.
We need help. We have no idea.
We need tons of help. And also, the biggest thing that you can do is just spread the word about the show. Talk about us on your social media platform of choice. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Amigos Retro Gaming. We are on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, all the podcast platforms you can find us on. So if you're watching us on YouTube and want to take us on your commute, you can subscribe to the podcast there. I would like to thank our Spectrum supporters on Patreon. We've got Frodo NL, THT, Pixels at Dawn, Chris Foltz, Paul Harrington, Boss Man Harrington we call him,
Ooh.
and Christopher Hasifa.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd also like to mention that we do record this show live every Friday. This week we're recording a little early.
Snow day.
You can join us on YouTube. Just make sure you click that bell and you'll be notified every time we go live. You can join us in the chat. We got Neville Overman in the chat, Will Williams, Pixels at Dawn, Duncan Styles, Alec Mold, Retro Man Cave. Tons of folks in the chat. It's always a party. We'd love to have you join us live. John Marshall just popped in. So thank you guys for listening live. Thank you all out there for listening. And until next time, rewind tape
and press play.